September 19, 1952, a steamship cuts through the Atlantic carrying one of the most famous men on Earth away from the country that made him a legend. Charlie Chaplin stands on the deck staring at the horizon, unaware that he will never return to Hollywood as a resident again. In his pocket, a telegram from the U.S. Attorney General. His re-entry permit has been revoked. The man who made millions laugh is now an enemy of the state. But how did the beloved tramp become America's most wanted exile? The answer lies in a decade of paranoia, political witch hunts, and a government determined to silence dissent. This is not just the story of a filmmaker. This is the story of a man who dared to think differently in an age when conformity was survived. By the 1940s, Charlie Chaplin was untouchable. He had built an empire on silence, transforming physical comedy into an art form that transcended language, culture, and class. His films, The Kid, City Lights, Modern Times, weren't just entertainment. They were mirrors held up to society, reflecting the struggles of the poor, the cruelty of industrialization, and the absurdity of power. But mirrors make people uncomfortable, especially when they reveal too much. Chaplin never hid his political views. He criticized capitalism. He mocked militarism. He sympathized openly with the working class. In Modern Times, he portrayed a factory worker crushed by the machinery of industrial America, a direct attack on the very system that had made him rich. The establishment tolerated it barely. Then came The Great Dictator. In 1940, as Europe burned under Nazi occupation, Chaplin released a film that did the unthinkable. It mocked Adolf Hitler. At a time when many American corporations were still doing business with Germany, when isolationism dominated U.S. policy, Chaplin used satire as a weapon. The final speech, a 6-minute plea for humanity, democracy, and compassion, was revolutionary. It was also dangerous. The FBI opened a file on him that same year. J. Edgar Hoover didn't trust artists. He especially didn't trust foreign-born artists with opinions. And Charlie Chaplin, born in London, never a U.S. citizen, despite living in America for 40 years, was the perfect target. The FBI file on Chaplin would eventually grow to over 2,000 pages. Agents followed him. They tapped his phones. They infiltrated his social circles. They documented every dinner party, every charity donation, every public statement. The goal wasn't justice, it was intimidation. Hoover's suspicion was simple. Chaplin was a communist sympathizer. The evidence? He once attended a fundraiser for Soviet war relief. He gave a speech supporting a second front in Europe during World War II, a position that aligned with Soviet interests. He refused to explicitly condemn communism when questioned. In McCarthy-era America, that was enough to destroy a career. But Chaplin didn't break easily. He had survived poverty, abuse, and public scandal. He wasn't going to bow to political pressure. When asked directly if he was a communist, he replied with defiance, "I am not a communist. I am a peacemonger." It didn't matter. The machine was already in motion. The U.S. government knew they couldn't arrest Chaplin for his politics, not directly, so they tried something else: destroy his reputation. In 1943, a young actress named Joan Barry filed a paternity suit against Chaplin. She claimed he was the father of her child. The case became a media circus. Barry's lawyer was funded by conservative groups with ties to Hollywood's anti-communist movement. The trial was less about paternity and more about character assassination. Blood tests proved Chaplin was not the father, but California law at the time didn't allow blood test evidence in paternity cases. The jury ruled in Barry's favor. Chaplin was ordered to pay child support for a child that wasn't his. The press devoured him. Headlines screamed, "Hollywood's moral degenerate." Editorials questioned his values, his influence, his right to remain in America. Religious groups called for boycotts of his films. Politicians demanded his deportation. Chaplin's crime? Being an easy target in a country hungry for scapegoats. By 1952, the pressure was unbearable. Chaplin had just completed Limelight, a melancholic film about an aging performer losing his relevance. It was deeply personal, a reflection of his own fear of obsolescence in a changing world. He decided to leave America temporarily for the film's London premiere. It was supposed to be a brief trip, a nostalgic return to his birthplace, a chance to escape the relentless scrutiny. 2 days after his ship departed New York, York, the U.S. Attorney General issued a statement. Charlie Chaplin's re-entry permit was revoked pending an investigation into his moral worth and political affiliations. If he wanted to return, he would have to face an immigration hearing, a public interrogation designed to humiliate him. Chaplin was 63 years old. He had lived in America since 1914. He had created an industry. He had employed thousands. He had donated millions to charity. And now he was being told he wasn't welcome. He never came back. Chaplin settled in Vevey, Switzerland with his wife Una and their children. The house overlooked Lake Geneva, quiet and far from the chaos of Hollywood. He would live there for the next 25 years until his death in 1977. But exile wasn't peace. It was isolation. Hollywood forgot him quickly. The studios moved on. The Academy didn't invite him to ceremonies. His films were quietly removed from circulation in American theaters. He became a ghost, a name whispered in history books, but absent from the present. Chaplin made 2 more films in Europe, A King in New York, 1957, a bitter satire of American McCarthyism, and A Countess from Hong Kong, 1967, a romantic comedy that felt out of place in the countercultural 1960s. Neither succeeded commercially. The world had changed, and Chaplin, once its king, was no longer relevant. In 1972, 20 years after his exile, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences invited Chaplin back to Los Angeles for an honorary Oscar. The ban had quietly lifted. The political climate had shifted. America wanted to reconcile with its past. Chaplin, now 83 and frail, accepted the invitation. He returned to the country that had exiled him, walking onto the stage at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion to a 12-minute standing ovation, the longest in Oscar history. He stood there, tears streaming down his face, unable to speak. The audience wasn't just applauding an artist. They were apologizing for a betrayal, but the damage was done. Chaplin returned to Switzerland immediately after the ceremony. He never set foot in Hollywood again. The official reason was political suspicion. The real reason was control. Chaplin represented something dangerous in Cold War America: independent thought. He didn't align with corporate interests. He didn't perform patriotism. He didn't worship power. He used his platform to question, to criticize, to challenge. And in an era where conformity was enforced through fear, that made him an enemy. The exile of Charlie Chaplin wasn't about communism. It was about silencing dissent. It was about punishing those who refused to bow. It was about a government willing to destroy one of its greatest cultural icons to send a message: step out of line and we will erase you. Today, Chaplin is remembered as a genius. His films are studied in universities. His image adorns posters and t-shirts. He is canonized as one of cinema's founding fathers. But the exile is rarely discussed. The FBI files are footnotes. The political persecution is sanitized into controversy. History prefers its heroes uncomplicated. It prefers to forget the moments when power devoured its own. Charlie Chaplin's exile is a reminder that fame does not protect you. Talent does not save you. In the end, if you refuse to conform, the system will find a way to cast you out. The man who made the world laugh died in Switzerland, far from the country that made him a legend, and America never apologized. Not really.